but I have to be as honest as I possibly can. I mean, was John a show-off? Come on, we all know that. He absolutely was. Does he belong in that category? Yes. Was he a big-timer? You know, you put him in the greatest of all time because he's the most well-known gangster that there is, probably on the planet, certainly in the United States. I mean, he's always there. Hey everybody, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is very good, very blessed on this end. As always, my friends, I give all the praise, honor, glory, thanksgiving to our God for that. You know, we do a lot of content on this platform, but you always like the mob stuff. That's how I started. That's how I built the channel. So I got to keep going to it, and it's okay with me. I mean, I enjoy it at times. And one of the things that you've been enjoying a lot lately is we've been doing these documentary style videos on these 50 mob people that you see in the back on this great portrait that was done by my good friend. And so we continue to do that. You continue to like it. The comments are great. So we got something a little bit different today. But I know you're going to enjoy it because especially all of you mob enthusiasts, you're always talking to me about certain people in that life. Michael, why don't you do this? How do you feel this guy is? How does he rank, you know, all-time biggest mob bosses or biggest mob people, those who had the biggest presence? So today we're going to do something. I have 25 guys in that life that I consider very prominent. They're all on the portrait behind me. And we're going to rank them, but we're not going to rank them according to who is the greatest, you know, right down to who is the worst. We're going to rank them in 5 categories. And these categories are greatest of all times, the big timers, the power players, the contenders, and the show-offs. So I'm going to go down the list of 25. I have them here on my phone. I got them in front of me here on this computer. And I'm going to give you what category I feel they should be in. And go along with me in the comments. And I know I'm going to get some saying, come on, Mike, this guy don't belong there. And I think it's this guy, and you're forgetting that. I love that. Let's go back and forth and let's rank them together. I think it'll be fun. And again, people, when I'm doing this, I'm not glorifying the life. But listen, come to terms with it, people. The Mafia in America had a tremendous impact. It's part of the history of this country, especially in the last 100+ years. No doubt about it. We control the unions at one time. If you control the unions in this country, you control the country. Trust me. Why? Because you control politicians. Michael, why do you say that? Very simple. You all know this. What do politicians want? They want money and they want votes. Well, with the Teamsters unions and unions of that size, the dock workers, the retail bartenders and waitresses, labor unions, you name them, we had huge pension funds that can support campaign donations. And of course, like the Teamsters, 2.5 million members plus their families, we got votes. So when you can control that politically, you control the country in a big way. We had a big impact on presidential elections. One in particular, we don't have to get into that again. We had a lot of control in this country. We had a lot of influence in this country. Part of our history, like it or not. And you know what I say right now, the biggest mafia in America is in the halls of Washington, D.C. And so many of you agree with me, especially in the last several years, what we're seeing going on. So when we're doing this, we're not glorifying the life. We're not saying that. We're just going over a part of history that is of tremendous interest to many people. I know that. I've been speaking for 30 years, always get a good reaction, and have found all throughout the world people are intrigued with this life. Let's do it. Let's have some fun. Don't make a big, you know, oh, Michael, this is serious. You're influencing other. No, we're not. We're just having some fun with it. And we're doing something that I think people are interested in. So let's go. All right. So in terms of, again, greatest of all time, big timers, power players, contenders, show-offs. Let's go down the list. First one being Lucky Luciano. Well, listen, we all know about Lucky. I would have to say that he's got to be placed in the GOAT, the greatest of all time, one of the greatest of all times. Why? Because it was his foresight that really created the commission. And the commission was kind of the ruling body of that life for right up until today. I don't know how effective or how much influence the commission has today, because the mob does still exist, not nearly as influential as it was during my day, not nearly as powerful as it was during my era. I always say the golden years of Cosa Nostra in this country, mid-40s through Luciano's era, right through the mid-80s when the RICO Act came in and started to do, a lot of destruction. Let's put it that way. Good or bad, whatever side of that life you're on. So we got to put Lucky in there. He had a tremendous influence. Him, Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel, all those guys, they came up at the same time and had a major influence. And he was a major player. Got rid of Mazzaria, got rid of Maranzano. He was a major player in that life. That the influence he had during World War II, okay? He helped the U.S. government and the Allies in Sicily at that time. He helped at the docks to protect the docks during that time. They were very worried. CIA, they came to him, and he had a lot of influence in a positive way. So let's get Lucky Luciano in there for one of the greatest of all times. All right, next, Paul Castellano, Gambino family boss. We all know who he is. I would have to put him as a major power player, obviously. I don't consider him a big timer. Look, every boss obviously has a lot of juice and a lot of power. Paul Castellano, because he, is the boss of one of the biggest families in the country, the Gambino family. I just don't know in how high of regard he was held by other people in that family, other bosses in that family. And of course, we know what happened to him. So I would put Paul, obviously, as a power player, but he certainly wasn't the greatest of all time, and he certainly wasn't a big timer, in my view, when you look at the total picture of all these mob bosses. Okay, let's continue. Tony Big Tuna Accardo, Chicago outfit boss. I definitely put him as a big timer. He ruled that family for quite a long time, had a tremendous amount of influence, had influence during the Kennedy era, the JFK era. You know what I said about that as far as the assassination. He was very close with Carlos Marcello. He was close with bosses in New York. I'd have to put him as a big timer, had tremendous influence in that life and obviously over the city of Chicago. So let's put Tony Accardo in as a big timer. Joseph Bonanno. Well, listen, reluctantly, I have to put him in as a big timer also because he was one of the original families. And he did have a major influence on the life in developing that life in this country. So even though, again, for those of you that don't know the story, he pulled a power play that was later, unearthed or seen by everybody. And as a result, they spared his life. He could have gotten killed. But they told him basically, you're on the shelf, get out of town, and we'll spare your life because you were a boss. So they moved him out, or he moved out to Phoenix, Arizona. But you have to say that he was a big timer because he was one of the original guys that came over here from Italy, and he played a major role in developing Cosa Nostra, the Mafia in this country. At 74 years old, after everything I've been through, staying healthy is my top priority. That's why this Cove Pure system has become my new favorite tool at home. When I was in the life, we had a saying, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. Well, there's an enemy in your kitchen right now, and that's your sink water. Families spend up to $1,350 a year on bottled water, thinking they're being smart. I guarantee you, people, I spend that every 2 months. But Columbia University found that there are 240,000 plastic particles in every liter. You're paying a premium price to really poison yourself. And sink water? The CDC reports 1.1 million Americans get sick from germs every single year. Harvard research shows that 105,000 develop cancer from tap water. Then there's fluoride. They claim it's for healthy teeth, but it shouldn't be forced on people. Studies show it lowers IQ in children, hormone disruption, all sorts of problems. No wonder RFK Jr. wants to ban fluoridation. Cove Pure is the only purifier I trust to do the job. They're certified to remove up to 99.9% of contaminants using the very same technology that they use on space shuttles. The best part of it is there's no installation, no maintenance headaches. You just plug it in and you're ready to go. Your family deserves better. Get $200 off at covepure.com/Franzese. Once again, an offer you shouldn't refuse. Okay, Carlos Marcello, definitely a big timer. Had tremendous influence. Again, we go back to JFK and, his influence. RFK had it in for him in a big way. He ruled the city of New Orleans. And you know what? His impact is still felt in that city and all over the state of Louisiana. It's one of the states where the mob influence is still seen pretty heavily there. And I know people are going to disagree with that, but I have some inside information. So I definitely put Carlos in the big timer fashion. Vincent the Chin Gigante. You know what? Again, a big timer. He was the real power in New York during my era for sure. And let me tell you something. I don't want to lessen the power that Fat Tony Salerno had. I don't want to lessen that. But I think every major move, I'm pretty sure that every major move that Fat Tony made, I'm sorry to call him Fat Tony, but that's how I knew him by. Every move that he made that was major, he would discuss it with Chin, because Chin was the real power over the Genovese family, and he had a lot of influence over all 5 families and over, all of Cosa Nostra in general in the United States. So I have to put him as a big timer for sure. Russell Bufalino. I'd have to say Russ was a power player. He had influence, especially in the Northeast. He was well respected. If you saw the movie Irishman, you saw that he was involved to a degree with Jimmy Hoffa. That whole story in The Irishman is not all true. Sheehan did not have the influence that they claimed he had, and he wasn't one of the shooters in the Hoffa matter. I know that for a fact. But Russ Bufalino did have a lot of juice, so I would definitely put him in as a power player. Salvatore Maranzano. I would have to put him in. I'd have to put him in as a big timer. Why would I say that? He was one of the original Cosa Nostra guys with power here. And after Mazzaria got killed, he orchestrated that. Lucky Luciano was the shooter in that, or one of the shooters. But Maranzano orchestrated that. And after that, he was the one that divided Cosa Nostra up into families. He was the one that did it. And obviously he got too big. He wanted to be the boss of all bosses again. And then Lucky Luciano took him out. But he was absolutely a big timer in this life, no doubt about it. Okay, let's go to number 9, Nicodemo Scarfo. I'd have to put him in as a power player only because he was a boss of Philadelphia for quite some time. I wouldn't say he was a big timer in the whole picture of Cosa Nostra, but he certainly had a lot of influence and power in Philadelphia. Unfortunately, it didn't last too long. He was in and out of prison all the time. So I would put him as a power player. Number 10, Carmine Persico, Colombo family boss, my boss. I'd have to put him in again as I would say a power player, because he did have quite a lot of control over the family, and he did have some influence among the 5 families in New York. But unfortunately for Junior, as I called him, in and out of prison all the time, he could never really function as mob boss effectively, because if he wasn't in prison, he was on parole. He was always under, FBI watch. So I would definitely put him as a power player because, again, he was a boss, but certainly not a big timer or the greatest of all times. Okay, number 11, Frank Costello. Definitely a big timer in my view. I said this many times. He was a boss, an acting boss, and later maybe the real boss under Luciano. I always say that one of the most effective bosses was Frank Costello. Why? Violence, last resort for him. He was a big power player in that regard, in that he knew how to use the Mafia to really benefit himself in business. He had great political connections. They called him the prime minister. If the bosses would model themselves after Frank Costello, I think we would have had a more effective organization across the board. Cosa Nostra would have been more effective. We know what happened with him. Vito Genovese tried to take him out, and then he said, I'm done. He was smart in that regard, too. He knew when to wrap it up and say, I'm done. So definitely a big timer in my view. All right, let's go to number 12. Vinny Gorgeous Basciano, Bonanno family boss. He was after my time, but I recently had to sit down with Dominic Ciccali, a good friend, and he was quite friendly, I would say, with Vinny, knew him very well. And I would say Vinny, I would have to put him in as a contender. He didn't really have a lot of power and influence. The Bonanno family on a whole didn't have a lot of power and influence. I can't say too much about him. Don't know him well. He's doing, I believe, life in prison at this point. So he didn't have time to really have that much influence or power. But during his time as a Bonanno family guy, he was well respected as far as I know. Okay, Joey Massino. I don't know where to put Joey Massino. I mean, he's a guy, he was a Bonanno family boss. I knew Joey. I'd met him on several occasions. He came out of my neighborhood in Greenpoint. But he, while in prison after getting a 300-year prison sentence, obviously convicted on RICO, he started to cooperate with the government and wired himself up against other people. One of them being Vincent Basciano. And that's why Vinny's gotten all this time. So I don't even know where to place him in this category. You know, not a show-off. I guess you got to put him down as a contender. He was a boss. Maybe you can put him as a big-timer, but I'd have to put him in as a contender for what he ultimately did. He really hurt that family in a big way and bought himself out of prison. But, you know, it's one thing being a cooperator, but another thing, wiring yourself up while you're in prison and putting other people in trouble in that regard. I don't even know what to say about that. Okay, number 14, Raymond Patriarca, the Patriarca family boss. I would have to put him as a power player. He had a lot of influence, a lot of power, especially in the Northeast. And I never had really the opportunity to meet with him, but I met people around him. Very well respected. One of the rougher guys, I would say, but definitely a contender. Okay, number 15, Vito Genovese, Genovese family boss. I'd have to put him in as a big timer. I really do. I mean, look, he had a lot of influence. They continued to name the family after him. Even there have been a couple of bosses, Fat Tony Salerno, Vinny Gigante, and bosses after him. But the family is still given his name. He even got the name taken from Luciano, taken from Costello, and they named it for him. So you got to put him as a big timer. And he did help to build that family into the most powerful, I think, of all the families in America. So let's put him in there as a big timer. I'm not going to continue to tell his story because everybody knows it. We just did a documentary style video on him. Got a good response, very well received. So go back and look at the video. It's posted up there now. Anthony Tony Ducks Corallo, somebody that I knew, met him on several occasions. He was a Lucchese family boss. I'd have to put him up there as a real power player. He had a lot of influence. He's very well respected in New York. Unfortunately, he was caught on tape. The Jaguar that they were driving was, there was a bug installed in that, and a lot of conversation that he had on that bug was the basis for the commission case. So unknowingly, he did harm to himself and the family. Again, unknowingly, he never cooperated or did anything like that. He ended up getting 100 years on the commission case. So he certainly was a power player in that life, a well-respected guy. Carlo Gambino, number 17. I have to put Carlo in as one of the greatest of all times. He ruled his family for 20 years. He built it, the Gambino family, into one of the biggest families in the country. He never went to prison. He was not a show-off in any way. He knew that he had to maintain a low profile in order to survive. He did that well while building his family. Very well respected. The family still carries his name, the Gambino family. So without a doubt, one of the greatest of all times. And there could be an argument made that Tony Accardo should be put in one of the greatest of all times category also. And, you know, I may rethink that for a minute. He ran his family for well over 20 years. And in that regard, I think I'm going to move him out of the big timers and put him in one of the greatest of all times just because of his longevity and because of the fact that he was able to maintain a fairly low profile. I got to move him up into that category. I think he belongs there. Okay, Al Capone. Well, you definitely got to put him as a show-off, no doubt about it. But again, he fits in different categories because you want to put him as one of the greatest of all times. Look, during Prohibition, he knew how to build his family up. You know, how to build, it wasn't even a family at that time. It was just the Capone group, the Capone family, whatever you want to call it. It hadn't been divided up, Cosa Nostra, at that time. But you got to put him in different categories. You put him in the greatest of all time because he's the most well-known gangster that there is, probably on the planet, certainly in the United States. I mean, he's always there. So I think we can put him in a couple of categories. Let's put him in the greatest of all times just because of the mark that he left, you know, on Cosa Nostra, on this country in general. You have to. I mean, they still talk about him. More movies are made about him than anybody else. But then you got to put him in as a show-off because he was a very showy guy, no question about it. You know, he wanted to be seen. He wanted to be known. So you got to put him in two categories, I think. Uh, he could even be it as a big timer because look, during Prohibition, he knew how to use Prohibition to really build up his group in Chicago. So he fits into a lot of different categories, but let's put him in the greatest of all time, and let's put him in a show-off. All right, so far Al Capone is the only one that was in two categories, and I think he fits both well. Tommy Lucchese family boss. I would have to say that he was a contender. You don't hear too much about him. He did run his family fairly well. Lucchese was the Henry Hill group and Jimmy Burke and all of those guys. You saw the movie Goodfellas. That was about their family. But again, you don't hear too much about him. He was one of the early guys. He was around. The original family was named in his name, and it stays in that name until today. But I don't see him having, just that much. You don't hear too much about him. So let's put him in there as a contender. I think that's a proper category for him. Meyer Lansky. Well, Meyer Lansky wasn't a made member of Cosa Nostra. Obviously, he was Jewish. So where would I put him? He worked very closely with Lucky Luciano. I think he had a lot of influence on Lucky in many, many ways. He certainly was the conduit between the government and Luciano when they were working out that deal during World War II and working out the deal for Luciano to get his sentence reduced. And ultimately, he was able to orchestrate that. So I'd put Meyer Lansky as a big timer. Look, everybody knows who Meyer Lansky is. They know his name, and he did have a lot of influence. So let's put Meyer Lansky in the big timer category. Now, some of you are going to disagree with that. I want to hear it. Number 20, Tony Salerno. I keep calling him Fat Tony. No disrespect, Tony, but that's how we knew you affectionately as Fat Tony. And he was, as we know, the Genovese boss during the same time that Chin Gigante had a lot of power, and probably could say that he was the real power or the real boss in that family. But again, I don't like to demean Tony's role in that because he wasn't just a stand-in, he wasn't there for show, and he wasn't a puppet. He had a lot of control. When it came to really serious matters or big matters, I'm sure he consulted Chin in that regard, and Chin had a lot of influence. Chin wanted to remain, his whole act for 30 years, walking on the street as if he was, on the verge of a mental institution. But that's what he wanted, so he wanted Tony to be in the position that he was in. So again, I don't want to demean him in that way. Tony had a lot of power and influence during that time. I think he was the most powerful boss during my era, without a doubt. So I put Tony definitely in there as a big timer. He got 100 years on the commission case, no doubt about it. I can tell you this, he was the one that gave the order. I say this upon good information and good authority. He was the one that gave the order in the Hoffa killing. I'll leave it at that. So let's put him in there as a big timer. Okay, Johnny Torrio, Chicago outfit boss. Listen, you only know Johnny Torrio, I believe, because you know Al Capone. And Al Capone was under Johnny Torrio for a while. He did have a lot of power and influence in Chicago. I would put him as a big timer because of that. But if you didn't know, or Al Capone didn't have all the fanfare that he had, I don't know if too many people would know Johnny Torrio. They don't make movies about him. You hear him always alongside of Al Capone. So let's put him in there as a power player. All right, John Gotti, number 23. Oh, boy. Listen, we got to be honest about John, and this is tough for me, and maybe the family doesn't mind because I know and like his family. I really do. I like them very much. They're good people, and I don't like to say anything negative about John because of that. I'm sorry. You say, come on, Michael, you got to call it like you see it. And then the most time I do, but I also have respect for people, and I have respect for families, and I have a lot of respect for John Gotti's family, especially his wife, Victoria, his daughter, Angel, John Gotti Jr. I respect these people. And, but I have to be as honest as I possibly can. I mean, was John a show-off? Come on, we all know that. He absolutely was. Does he belong in that category? Yes. Was he a big timer? And don't put him in that category yet. I'm just saying, I'm going over this. He certainly wasn't the greatest of all time. He was a big timer with regard to the type of media attention that he got, the type of publicity that he got. The fact that, he was the one that orchestrated the Paul Castellano hit. But how did that do what did that do for his family? Did that make his family any bigger, any better? No, it did not. And I think nobody can argue with that. So in that regard, was he a power player? I mean, I have to say he was, because he was able to orchestrate a hit on a boss. You know, so he was a power player in that regard. So look, I think this is another guy that we have to put in two categories. If I didn't say he was a show-off, I would get slammed, and rightfully so, from all the comments. So yes, you have to put him as a show-off. John liked the camera. No doubt about that. And I think you have to put him as a power player, because anybody that can orchestrate killing a boss and managing not to get killed himself should be in that category also. So let's put him as a power player. I would almost put him in as a big timer, just because of the publicity and the media attention that he got. But I'm going to keep him out of that category, because I don't know if you should be in that category for that reason alone. So let's leave him out of that. All right, Bugsy Siegel, number 24. You know, Bugsy Siegel, again, wasn't a made guy. He was Jewish. Was he a big timer? Well, I'd have to say that he was. And again, let's not categorize him yet, only because he was the guy that led people to Las Vegas, and he started the mob control over Las Vegas. So in that regard, that was a big deal, because other families followed him. New York followed him. He was part of the New York family, part of Lucky Luciano's crew. And then obviously Cleveland, the Midwest followed him out there, but he was the one with that vision. Now you could also make an argument, well, you know, they were into gambling already. They were into Cuba until the revolution in Cuba, and they would have got out to Vegas eventually. Okay, you could say that, and probably so, but Bugsy Siegel was the one that led them out there. So in that regard, I put Bugsy as a big timer. I really do. They make movies about him. You hear about him all the time. His eventual murder was big news. You hear about that all the time. Again, they made movies. They made a movie, Bugsy, about him. It was a great film, by the way. And so I'd have to put him in as a big timer, because I think he had that much influence, I would say, over Las Vegas for sure, and just over Cosa Nostra, the image of Cosa Nostra for sure. All right, and let's go to our last one on the list. And that was Joe Colombo, my boss at one time, somebody that I cared for very deeply, that I loved, very close to his family back then, and close with Chris Colombo, even though, I don't know, Chris had some things to say about me, but we patched it up. I don't know what was going on at that time, but anything is good. And look, you know, things happen on social media. I don't take it all to heart, and I don't know why people say things that they say at times, but forget that for a moment. Joe Colombo, where would he rank? Well, he certainly had a lot of influence, no question about that, because the family was named Joe Colombo, and he took it over from Joe Profaci. So why did they rename it Joe Colombo? Well, he had influence. That's why. You know, and during the time that he was boss over the family did very well. I know that for a fact. It was during my era. My dad was his underboss. So the family did well under Joe Colombo's rule. So was he a power player? He absolutely was. Listen, when he started the Italian-American Civil Rights League, I mean, that thing grew because of his power, influence, and because of his charisma. No question about it. Now, obviously, I think he made some mistakes. The fact that he got so much media attention, it didn't help him out, didn't help the family out later on. But he had the right intention. I want to make that clear. He had the right intention with that, in that he wanted to really, really do good for Italian Americans. He really did. And I can say that, and some people are going to knock me. Come on, Michael, it was a front for the Mafia. I don't believe that until this day. And I believe that the FBI took him out. I really do. I don't think it was Joe Gallo. I think it was the FBI that eventually took him out because of the impact that he was having, and because Italian Americans were really, really influenced by him in a positive way. He was doing things for kids at that time. So, you know, I have good things to say about Joe Colombo and his family. I was very friendly with his two boys. Both of them are dead at this point in time. Both Joey and Anthony, Joey Jr. and Anthony, and now, like I said, I'm close with Chris. So I got to put Joe Colombo as a big timer. And the family still has his name. Even though Persico took over after him, the family still has his name. So when somebody has that much influence and that much of a high profile in that regard, you got to put him in as a big timer. High profile in a good way with respect to Cosa Nostra. Okay, so I think we went through all 25. I am really anxious to hear what all of you are going to say about this. I know I'm going to get hit. I know that. People are going to say, come on, Michael, you forgot this about this. But I welcome that. Let's debate it. Let's go back and forth. Hey, I wish we could interact while we were doing this. It would be even better because I'd have you up there on the chat and I'd be getting banged and we've been getting, okay, I agree with you, I disagree. It would be good. But we couldn't do that, obviously, on this video. So that's it. That's my rankings from number 1 to 25 in those 5 categories. Chime in. Tell me what you feel about it. And tell me if you like this kind of stuff because we can get creative and do some other things. And again, people, we're not glorifying the life. And for all you Christians out there, don't say, Michael, why are you talking about this and you're not talking about Jesus Christ? You know how many times I get that? Listen, I'm not on this platform to preach. I'm not a preacher. I share my testimony whenever I have the opportunity to do that, but that's not what this channel is about. But is there anybody there that doesn't know that I'm a person of faith? I say it in my opening, I say it in my closing. Quite often I say it all the way through. And actually there is a video when I do nothing but share my faith. It's a couple of videos back. Go and look at it right now. But man, for you legalistic Christians, take it easy. You know, let me ask you a question. If you're an electrician, do you preach Jesus all day long while you're doing your electrical work? Of course not. You got to earn a living. You're an electrician. When you're a teacher, when you're an architect, when you're a biochemist, when you're a doctor, you're still doing your trade. That doesn't mean you're not a person of faith. So I happen to be on this platform. A lot of people like to hear about the mob stuff. I'm not glorifying it in any way. I left the life, and I've said many times it's an evil life. I don't call the guys evil. I call the life evil. Why? Because families get destroyed. That's why I left the life. So give me a break when it comes to that, people. Other than that, pour on. Michael, you made a mistake. How can you put this guy in that category? I think it should be something else. Whatever you want to do, let's go back and forth. I'll try to get to as many as I can so we can have some fun with it. So, my friends, I want to take a glass of wine because that was a lot of work. I'm going to be honest with you. And this is my non-alcoholic wine. It's available at Walmart. But people, I got to tell you this. Yes, I'm plugging it. Why? Because last year at this time, we were in 400 locations. This year, right now, at this time, as I drink this, we're in 3,500 locations. We'll be in 5,000 most likely by the end of the year. What does that tell you? People are enjoying the wine. For the price, tough to beat. I got to tell you this. Our fruit wines, our blackberry wine, I love it. I really do. Flying off the shelf. It's in a blackberry bottle. You got to get this for the holidays. It's going to be beautiful all over your table, and it tastes great. And our pomegranate wine, personally, I'm not into pomegranate. I'll be honest with you, but it's in a beautiful bottle. We can't keep that on the shelves. Flying off. This is going to be great for the holidays. Trust me, you're going to love it. Plus, we're coming up with a cherry wine and a strawberry wine in a cherry bottle, in a strawberry bottle. You're going to love this stuff. Trust me when I tell you, people are loving it. We can't get enough. We got, I think, a big shipload coming in right now. But the wine is really growing. And people, look, you want to be partners with me? We're doing another WeFunder call. They've been so successful. We have brought people in. We do it for a couple of reasons. Number one, I want to share the wealth. I really mean that because this is going to be a big company. USA Today said we're going to be the next billion-dollar wine company. I didn't tell them to print it. That's what they said because they're watching our progress and they know that we're on to something. If you want to become my partner, and I really mean that, you want to get involved in this business and you want to be an ambassador for us, spread the word, heading towards something really big, I believe. I'm not trying to oversell. I'm telling you what I believe. That's why I'm involved in this business, and the progress we have made is bearing me out. But go to invest.franzesewine.com. And you'll see when our next call is. It's going to be the last call. I promise you that. We're not giving any more of this company up. That's it. Invest.franzesewine.com. Go on this right now. We'll tell you when the next call is. You have an opportunity to become my partner, like so many people have. And I want you to question those people and see if they're happy with what they've seen so far and what they believe is coming for them all. So with that, I'm going to end this. How do I always leave you? Same way. Never going to change. Be safe. You know my feelings about that, people. I hope you watch my video about the rash of killings and slashings and everything that we're having because of these mental health issues that are going on in this country. Where does it start? At the top. I'm telling you right now, trickles down to people that really can't deal with it, so they act out. Watch that video. It's important for all of you. Be safe. Be healthy. Thank God for RFK. I'm telling you, got that red dye out of our foods and a lot of other things. Be careful with what you eat. Read the labels. Read those labels. Be safe. Be healthy. Yes, God bless each and every one of you, your neighborhoods, your communities, your families, your loved ones. God bless America. Yes, I'll see you next time. Salud. Franzese wine, can't beat it. It's good.